What up and welcome to the Rival Fantasy Week 14 Risers episode. I'm your host, Neil Maligno, and the goal of this episode is to talk about players whose fantasy value and stock is on the rise. The players discussed in this episode may be good trade targets for you, waiver wire ads, must-starts, and more. We want to get you ready for the playoffs. We want you winning in the playoffs, and we want to get you to the championship. And how are we going to do that? Maybe with some rookie wide receivers, some rookie quarterbacks, some rookie running backs, maybe it's some veterans who are sneaking in there, some sleepers at play. I don't know, man. Let's get into the episode. Let's find out exactly who you need if you're trying to win in the playoffs, you're trying to get to the playoffs, you're trying to get to the championship. I'm here to help you with all that. Now, I do keep these episodes quick hitting. If you want longer or interactive content, subscribe to the channel, join our weekly live episodes, including our Sunday Start State Advice live stream that kicks off every Sunday morning at 11:30 a.m. You can also drop your questions in the comments here because no question goes unanswered here at Rival Fantasy. Let's go ahead and jump into the Week 14 Risers. Jake Browning is a dog. I'll be the first one to admit it. I had major concerns about the Bengals playmakers when Joe Burrow was announced out for the season. I worried that the loss of Joe Burrow would impact even the most solid starters in the Bengals offense, including Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon. Week 13 proved otherwise with Jake Browning hitting Chase for 11 receptions, 149 yards, and 1 touchdown. Hell, even Joe Mixon caught 6 receptions for 49 yards while also rushing for 68 yards and 2 touchdowns. I'd like to see T. Higgins get involved a little more, but still, Jake Browning is a riser heading into fantasy football week 14. Joe Flacco was signed late into the season, raised from the practice squad, and then started in place of Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who was already starting in place of Deshaun Watson. Now, Joe wasn't perfect in his first NFL game in the 2023 season, but he also wasn't terrible, throwing for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. It certainly didn't help that star wide receiver Amari Cooper left the game with a concussion, but Flacco still has weapons in the offense that give him fantasy value if he continues to get the starts. I'm a fan of DTR, but Joe Flacco performed better than him, so I don't imagine the Browns coach is switching back to DTR even if he's healthy. Well, it's safe to say that Achane is healthy again because we got yet another 20-plus fantasy point performance from him in Week 13. Crazy enough, Achane has finished as a top 5 running back every single week that he's had more than 1 carry. There is no doubt in his skills or how the Dolphins use him. As long as he stays healthy, Achane is a part of an elite offense that will continue to flourish in fantasy. Chuba Hubbard finished Week 13 as the running back 6 in PPR scoring with 104 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, obviously, after the Panthers fired their head coach and with Bryce Young having a rough rookie season, I wanted to bail on this offense in fantasy entirely. Now that Hubbard turned around, had a good game against a tough defense, I may have to step on the brakes a little bit. Not getting any passing targets does hurt, but if the plan is to keep feeding Hubbard like they did in Week 13, I'm here for it. The Texans have 2 wide receivers that I love in fantasy. Unfortunately, in Week 13, they lost breakout rookie Tank Dell for the season, leaving CJ Stroud down 1 fantastic playmaker. Thankfully for Stroud, he still has Nico Collins and some other talented pass catchers, and one is about to rise in a serious way. Noah Brown, who you might remember had 153 yards in Week 9 and 172 yards in Week 10, will now be relied on to pick up where Dell left off. Noah is a riser for the rest of season. Week 13 had some explosive fantasy performances by wide receivers, but it's also a week that the position saw a few injuries. Brown star wide receiver Amari Cooper left with a concussion, so Joe Flacco turned to a familiar face in wide receiver Elijah Moore. In Week 13, Moore had 4 receptions for 83 yards, but he also had 12 targets in the game. So there's a higher upside available here than what we actually witnessed. The Browns play the Jags next week, who just got ate up by quarterback Jake Browning. So I'd say Flacco and Moore have the potential for a big game. Brevin Jordan played well in place of Dalton Schultz, who was out with an injury in Week 13. We don't know yet if Dalton will return in Week 14, but Jordan did enough to prove that he's worthy of a pickup and start if Dalton misses any more time. Jordan may have put up a quiet 3 receptions for 64 yards, yet that placed him at tight end 9 for Week 13. With Tank Dell done for the season and Dalton Schultz banged up, Jordan is a riser at tight end. It's really important to mention that nobody steps in and duplicates what Mark Andrews does in the Ravens offense. Isaiah Likely is now the starting tight end for the Ravens, and in Week 12 versus the Chargers, he actually had the most receiving yards in the team. He has Lamar Jackson throwing to him, who prior to the injury was busy helping Mark Andrews be one of the top tight ends in the NFL. Outside of a handful of players, you'll be hard-pressed to find a tight end with the upside that Likely has rest of season. The injury to Derrick Henry in Week 13 is yet another reminder of how good Tyjae Spears can be in fantasy football. Nobody enjoys seeing players get hurt, but the simple fact is that when it does happen, it's an opportunity for the next guy to fill those shoes. Last week, Spears finished right outside the top 15 at running back, and that's when Henry rushed for 102 yards and 2 touchdowns. If Henry misses Week 14 against the Dolphins, Spears has a big moment ahead of him, but even if Henry does play, Spears is a riser that cannot be ignored. Now, if you want more content from Rival Fantasy, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate your support, including those who like this video or leave comments. We appreciate every single thing you do. Trust me, I know it's not a lot for you. It takes 2 seconds, but for us, it means the world. You can also follow us on social for all the latest app updates, promos, latest talking sports, all at Rival Fantasy on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all those platforms. And of course, visit rivalfantasy.com or download the Rival Fantasy Sports app, whichever is more convenient for you. Use the link in my description to get you up to $200 deposit match plus a $25 free voucher. Go check out the site. Even if your fantasy season is over or you lose in the fantasy playoffs, we have weekly and daily games available for you for football, basketball, baseball when the season starts back up. So get in there. Again, rivalfantasy.com or download the Rival Fantasy app today. My name is Neil. Week 14 Risers is out.